Amazing to have you with me today. I just want to ask you a couple of questions in general about your life, about your composing. And let's start with what was your early musical background?
I learned violin from 4 years old, but my mum was a pianist. I can remember being a very small child and just sitting by the piano whilst my mum was practicing Chopin etudes. So those pieces are very ingrained into me. And then at 4, I learned violin, learned Suzuki method, and that was a major part of my life for a long time. My grandfather had played the violin, and in fact, I still have his violin from all those years ago. And then when I was a teenager, when I was 13, for my birthday, I got an electric guitar, a white electric guitar, which is actually weirdly, bizarrely, I don't have it out that often, but it's right here.
Wow.
With my
Yeah.
white Washburn guitar from when I was 13.
So your family was musical, and that's how you got brought
On
up
my,
to
on my
music.
mother's side, yeah. And on my father's side, they were also very cultured. So music was a big part of our life, especially classical music in the house. But then as a teenager, I got into, my young teens were punctuated with, first of all, with NWA and Public Enemy. And then I was 14, 15 years old when the Seattle grunge thing happened. And so I remember exactly where I was standing when I heard Teen Spirit for the first time. And so I had an electric guitar, and so we were in bands, and I did all of that. The electronic dance music, so we didn't call it that back then, sort of trance and techno, and that all happened in my late teens and when I went to university. So then that electronic music was a very, very big part of my life. So I was quite fortunate in that there were some really significant musical movements during my teenage life, and I really delved deeply into into all of them, both in the music and culturally.
Did you go to specialized music school? Because back in Bulgaria, where I am from, and my sister, we have this special music school where you again learn all the other subjects like math and history, and but it's very, very concentrated on music.
No, I really didn't, to be honest. I was good at music, but I wasn't exceptionally good at music. I wasn't the best person at music in my school or even in my class. Maybe that's what drove me towards writing, is because I realized I was never going to be a successful professional
You're
violinist.
saying you were not the best maybe technically, but the love of music, you still really, really liked music, so you wanted to pursue that
Well,
in another.
I mean, just to jump in there, no, what it was really, it came from wanting to be in rock and roll bands with my friends. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a guitarist in a rock band,
Right.
and I was in plenty of bands. But then I got a job working for a film composer when I was 19 years old, and I only had a sort of half an idea of what that was, because of course now film music is a
Yeah.
very popular thing, but it was not then. It was very niche. In fact, for many years in my early 20s, when I said that I was working in film music, people were like, "Oh, what's that?" And I would say, like, when there's like music in the background of a film, people had never even considered it before. Now it's very mainstream and people are really into it, but back then it was very, very niche, and certainly in classical music worlds it was really looked down upon. It was not considered to be serious music in any
Yeah.
sense. People began to realize the reality of the situation, which is, in the modern world, in the last 100 years, Hollywood is by far and away, immeasurably, the greatest contributor to classical music commissions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, there is nowhere else that has invested as much money and opportunity into the creation of classical music as Hollywood.
Yeah. Exactly. Why do you compose for documentaries? How did that happen?
Documentaries. Well, I mean, it's very rare that I compose a documentary these days. I mean, the only one I've done in many years is the one about Sergei Polunin. I did that because my friend was producing it. She asked me to, and also I'd had a few dinners with Sergei and with David LaChapelle, and it was all kind of integrated in with this idea that we were going to all get together and write a ballet. I mean, when I started out doing BBC documentaries, Horizon, and these medical documentaries. That's where I sort of got my chops for writing film music at all. Those were the first gigs. Very first gig I ever got, a proper paid gig, was something called Colosseum, which was soon after Gladiator had been released, and it was like a live action docudrama about gladiators, and that was the first time I got to record an orchestra in Abbey Road. Back then they used to give you quite a lot of money to do those kinds of things. Although, sorry, I'm giving you a very long-winded answer. The one exception is that over the years I've worked with David Attenborough a few times. And actually right now I'm in the middle of my fourth collaboration with David. Right now, actually, it's on the screen in the background. You might have seen some manta rays a moment ago. Literally just writing music for a new flagship BBC program called Perfect Planet.
So how do you take your inspiration to write for a documentary or for a movie soundtrack? Where do you take your inspiration from? If I have to compose, I have to be completely alone, like for at least half an hour. When I have an idea, I have to sit and write it down straight away. And then if my child walks in the room, that's it. Or my husband or something. And the idea is gone and I don't have inspiration anymore.
I've had to learn to write over the years. I get less and less time to write with it, whether that's because of the business end of what I have to do, or whether that's because of family commitments. So I've learned to be quite controlled about it. But how do you do it? I think there's two parts to writing music. I think that there is a craft element and there's a creative element. And this applies to whether you're writing a symphony, or whether you're writing a ballet, or whether you're writing a TV show or a film score or a video game. The craft bit is, well, it's very easy to describe in film, for example, is that you have Darth Vader's theme, and now you have to write a scene where he walks onto the screen and he's marching, or he's particularly angry, or he's fighting, or whatever it is. But once you've got the theme, making it fit the scene, that's craft. And anyone can learn to do that. Now, coming up with the theme, that is the really difficult thing. And it's something I think a lot about.
Is there a time where you compose something and then you think, oh, that's amazing, that's genius, we've never heard that melody before, because there's so many written things nowadays, and you're like, did I hear that before, did I not? Oh, this is original. So I write it, and then I wake up the next day and it's, oh, that really doesn't sound good.
Well, you're saying exactly how I think about it. Maybe slightly less practical, maybe more metaphysical. So I don't know if this is helpful, but I wonder, why is it that this group of notes is random and this other group of notes is a tune? And it's easy to talk about it for me in terms of art. If I draw 5 lines on a piece of paper, that's a scribble. But if Picasso draws 5 lines on a piece of paper, it's an amazing work of art. And why is that? And I think the answer is that there is a moment at which it stops being 5 lines on a piece of paper and it begins to mean something. When it begins to mean something, those 5 lines on a piece of paper are greater than the sum of their parts. They're not just 5 lines on a piece of paper. They also have meaning. And this is the same with music. This group of notes is random, but this group of notes has meaning. Now, that's what you're searching for when you're trying to write music. Something that has meaning, that has emotion, that has soul. Yeah. And you asked a question that I ask myself all the time. So we break down the creative process into, okay, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to find this. But what I ask myself is, when I do find it, is it because I breathed life into those notes? Or did those notes always exist and they always had life? I just found them on this particular moment of messing about. That question, I maybe it's a mixture of both. I don't know, not sure what the answer to that is. But it's a fascinating question. But then back to the more practical. Again, when you talk about it, how do you know, is it good? Has it worked? And you come back to it the next day. What I do, my rule for me is always write something, because the problem is you sit down at the keyboard and you're sitting down at those 88 black and white notes that I can see right next to you over there, and they're the same 88 black and white notes that Tchaikovsky sat in front of, that Chopin sat in front of, that Wagner sat in front of, right? And if you start to think about that, and then it's like, okay, now pick one, begin. I mean, how do you even do that? It's terrifying. And there's too much, especially when somebody said to you, I really want you to write like this amazing piece of music. And, there's so much pressure. How do you do that? So what I tend to do is I think to myself, all right, can I write an amazing work of genius by 6 o'clock and go to the pub and have a beer with my friends? Probably not. That's going to be extremely difficult to achieve. But could I write something really average by 6 o'clock? Definitely. I can definitely achieve the goal of writing something average. And so that way I tried to remove the obstacle of putting an unrealistic pressure on myself, and I just write. And I don't care whether it's good or bad. The next day I'll listen to it, and if it's good, I'll keep it. If it's bad, I'll throw it away. Most often it's kind of just all right, but when I listen to it, I think, but if I just did this and this and this, then it would be good. That's my process. But the most important rule is to make sure that you have written something, because if you haven't done something, then you go to bed in the evening with even more anxiety about the work that you've got to do the next
Yeah.
day. So
Yeah.
my advice about this is just write something, even if it's nonsense. It will help you write something better the next day.
Yeah, very good. And is there anything particular that helps you for the flow? Like having a cup of coffee or just
No,
walk
there's a
for a little
great
bit?
podcast. I can't remember what it's called, which is about the routine of artists, artists from all walks of life, of what they do in the morning. Some are spoken by themselves, some are spoken by other people, just describing what they do in the morning to get ready before they sit down and write. But for me, at this moment in my life, it's just about finding 5 minutes of peace and quiet. Like
I'm
any
with you there.
moment.
I'm with you there, exactly. Because you're now known with your compositions, isn't it a little bit more difficult now because you want to achieve that and even more from what you have composed already? Something better.
Again, I try not to think about that. I mean, there is an element of when you sit down to start work on it, you just feel like, oh my God, I just got lucky all the other times. Maybe I'm not going to get lucky this time. I suppose it depends how you work. It used to worry me more, but now what happens is that I go through periods of writing in certain ways, and right now I have I have a certain way in which I like to write. It sort of has some roots in minimalism with a sort of romantic line that goes across it. And the rules are quite restrictive. And so I've got a process by which I like to write music. And I've been working in this way for about 2.5 years now. It really started with writing my album Space Station Earth, which is my project with the European Space Agency and the astronaut Tim Peake. And I've just been applying it to everything that I do, whether that be ballet or the next time I did it was for a ballet, and then I did it for a TV show. It was really just about this idea that I would just write one pattern, and that would play for the entire piece of music, and then I'd build another pattern or another melody, and I'd build it on top, and every single instrument would be one thing on top of another.
Yeah.
And actually it actually started with the ballet, and then it went to my space album. But it started with the ballet because the ballet company, Rombe, said to me, I asked them, well, what am I writing for in terms of the orchestra? And they said, well, how about you just have one of everything? And I just loved that idea. I was like, great, I have one violin, one viola, one cello, one bass, one flute, one oboe, one clarinet. And it was a real challenge. It was a really amazing challenge to write like that. But I decided everyone's just going to play one 8-bar thing that's going to repeat, or 4-bar thing that's going to repeat. That's how I created those pieces of music. And so now I'm sort of coming out the other side of that period where all the rules, the confines of those rules are being broken all the time, and they're sort of collapsing into some other thing that I'm doing now. But it's like a period of time. That's going to be a group of works that were done stylistically like that. And already I'm starting to come up with something completely different, another kind of thing, but I'm not really ready to talk about that because I'm not experimented with it yet. But that'll be the next few years of work.
Great. We can't wait to hear then. What is the best moment in your career?
It's really hard to answer a question like that because, I love the work that I do. And my God, I've been so lucky. My work has taken me to such extraordinary places. When I was commissioned to write music for this Korean artist and do this show where we did an open-air live concert for thousands of people in the gardens of the Louvre, and I conducted a 90-piece orchestra there, and I just got to write whatever I wanted. That was amazing. Or when Tim Peake, the astronaut, got in touch with me and asked me to work with him, and the projects that were born out of that. The ballets that I've done, which I love. The work I've done with Ralph Fiennes. Very, very proud of those films. It took a long time to find the right project, but when I got to collaborate with Christopher Bailey, who's like really one of the great geniuses of our times, if you ask me, when he was still at Burberry, he decided to reinvent the fashion industry and do men and women's collection together and sell direct to the customer. And he based a whole fashion show on a book by Virginia Woolf, who's one of my very favorite authors. And he just let me write this incredible music. And then I got to conduct an orchestra and a choir and a bunch of synths whilst we did a live catwalk, which broadcast all around the world. I've been on tour with David Gilmour. I've done a live show with Annie Lennox, and I've just had a really extraordinary career. I've gotten to express my musicality in many, many different ways across many different mediums, and I love that, and I strive for that. If I had tried to tell my teenage self that I was going to get to do even half of the things that I got to do, I don't think I would have ever believed it.
Yeah, I think we are very blessed to have people like you on this planet. You are truly an amazing composer, and we are so happy to collaborate with you and to play your pieces. And it's just such a joy every time we do that. And I just wanted to thank you and for your time and for your help throughout these years. And just wish you all the best, and we'll be always there looking up to you for your new projects.
Great, well, thanks very much. Thanks for the chat.